For 33 days, our honeymoon looked like a dream from the outside. Business class flights, luxury resorts, and unforgettable experiences across Hong Kong, Fiji, and New Zealand. But behind the scenes, it wasn't all smooth. We dealt with delayed flights, delayed baggage, doctor visits in multiple countries, unexpected hotel changes, and more than a few moments where we had to pivot in real time. So in this episode, we're sharing the side of the honeymoon that didn't make the highlight reel, and how we kept those setbacks from ruining the trip. Welcome to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Koch, along with my beautiful and lovely co-host, Taryn, my wife, and we are super excited for today's episode, which is going to be a little bit different than normal. Before we get into it, a few quick reminders. As always, you can catch all these episodes in their full entirety on YouTube. For those of you that watch our show only on YouTube, you're missing out on half the show, as we have our quick hits every Friday, which are up-to-date news in the world of points and miles and travel, all the deals, all the things that you want to know that's just come out within the last week. You're going to find audio only, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find those. And don't forget to catch our vlog style channel as well, Boldly Go Travels, on YouTube. And wherever you're listening or watching this, please don't forget to leave a like, a rating, subscribe, leave a review, and do all the things. We greatly, greatly appreciate it.
All right, so far in our honeymoon series, we have shared the highlights, the business class flights, the best resorts, the bucket list experiences across Hong Kong, Fiji, and New Zealand. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain, because what you didn't see on Instagram and what we didn't fully unpack in other episodes is that over 33 days of travel, plenty of things didn't go according to plan. We dealt with travel delays, delayed baggage, medical situations, and more. So these were situations that genuinely tested our patience and our teamwork, as well as, I'd say, our travel agility. And this episode is really all about that. Like, what do you do when things go wrong? How do you pivot? Because luxury travel doesn't mean stress-free travel, right? Points and miles don't eliminate problems. And a honeymoon, even a 33-day round-the-world honeymoon, is still real life happening in real time. So today we're sharing what went wrong, how we handled it, and what we would do differently, as well as what helped us navigate it without letting it derail our entire trip.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've been with us. This is part 4 of our 4-part honeymoon story. We started explaining through Hong Kong and then Fiji and New Zealand. And so in part 1, we talked about flying the longest flight in the world, which was amazing, on Singapore Airlines. But then after we got off that flight, we noticed something was wrong. And Taryn, I'll let you share what was that thing we noticed.
Yeah, so, we're in Singapore, love the airport. We were in a beautiful lounge. I loved it. But I started to feel a bit of, swollen glands in my throat. And that made me think, I should take some of the medicines that I brought in case something happens for a 33-day trip, which I had like full month of my prescriptions as well as other medications just in case. And I realized in the Singapore airport, and I am so embarrassed to share this because I promise this has never happened before, but I'm willing to be vulnerable with you guys. I left my entire medical thing of all of my medications, whether it's aspirin or prescriptions, all of it, I left it in a little cubby on the plane. And if I didn't feel bad, if I didn't feel sick, I probably wouldn't have even noticed it when we were at that lounge, to be honest. So in some ways, that could have been a blessing, because I probably would have we would have just continued on to Hong Kong, and I would have realized it way too late. So that was a really not an easy situation to navigate. So I've never done it before. I don't think I'll do it again. And I encourage you to definitely always check and make sure you don't leave anything on there, because they were incredible at helping us try to locate it. They knew where the plane was, but it wasn't able to get cleaned yet. It was in a hangar. And there was no one to go get it or to check where my things were. So, that ended up pushing back our connection. But they were really fantastic about helping, I think, in that situation.
Yeah, so the good bad news about it is our layover in Singapore was only supposed to be around 4 hours. I think you noticed this around an hour in because we had like just gotten settled, grabbed some coffee or whatever it may be, some food, because we landed in Singapore really early in the morning. I think we landed like 3 or 4 a.m. So the lounge was very, very empty. So we were getting settled. And then, as you mentioned, you realized that was lost. I was like, okay, this is a transatlantic, this is their ultra long haul flight. They're not turning this thing around immediately and flying back to JFK. So I'm sure the plane is there. It hasn't left yet, which is a good thing versus waiting for later. It didn't really end up mattering because, as you said, I guess for that type of plane, they don't just pull it in like most flights and they're ready to reload it, refresh it, fuel it, and go. It just literally was sitting out in a field, basically waiting for the next flight, which was much later. So it wasn't even right. Like they were like, oh, we know where the plane is and we can go search your things. It's just they're not pulling the plane in anytime soon.
Yeah, they're like, we can't get anybody on the plane in the next several hours. So that was a fun lesson to learn. Not really, but I learned it. And I am appreciative, though, because Singapore Air had the best storage of all of I think, the business class flights that we had on this entire trip. So I blame them for having too good of storage capabilities that I totally lost track of taking that out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the question is, what would you do in this scenario, right? And I think thankfully, we immediately went to Singapore Airlines concierge, so the check-in people, and said, hey, this is what happened. They went into action. The problem again is, and to kind of clarify the problem, we only had a 4-hour layover. So I don't remember exactly what our time was. Our original flight was supposed to leave. Let's just say it was supposed to leave at like 10 a.m., and they knew that plane wasn't getting pulled back into service until like noon. And so we knew there was two options. We either waited and they put us on a later flight and we just waited in Singapore for us to get those items, or they were like, hey, if you want, you can just make your connection, fly to Hong Kong, and then we'll put it, essentially, if you fill out the right paperwork and forms and everything works right, we'll make sure the stuff gets to Hong Kong. But that really wasn't a risk that we wanted to take, because that sounds pretty dicey to just hope that they were going to find it and then hope that they were going to put it on a plane to get to where we were going.
I mean, if it was all Tylenol and things that I could have bought at the airport, I probably would have been like, you know what, that's fine. But these are prescription medications that I already had planned, had a month in advance, had everything there, and I couldn't even get those refilled in another country at all, let alone refilled again, because I just refilled them. It was a whole month of every single medicine that I take, as well as like my little kit of, just in case, I've got my Mexican Montezuma's Revenge medicine, just in case we get some tummy thunder. And I have accumulated quite a few helpful things across our trips. So there was a lot there, honestly, even if I look at, how much it costs, right? With prescription medications in the US, the copays and everything else, like the value of the medicine that actually I had left on that plane was over $1,000. I would argue that it shouldn't cost that much in the US. And I'm sure all of our non-US listeners are like, how is it that expensive with insurance? But yeah, I was totally mortified that I forgot it. But the staff, Singapore Air, was spectacular. They were so helpful. They were so caring. They gave us options. It was not an ideal situation, but it ended up being a good call, I think, to stay. I got my things back. And we were just, later to get back out to Hong Kong than we had planned.
Yeah, so it was great. I mean, they literally brought the items to you in the lounge, knew exactly where we were sitting. They brought it to you.
With zip ties.
Yeah, with zip ties and everything like that, just saying, hey, is this, just confirming these are your items. And so it was great. We got the items. But if you recall, in part one, I mentioned that we got into Hong Kong close to midnight, checked into the Grand Hyatt at midnight. This was the reason why we were originally supposed to land at 4 p.m. So we ended up staying almost 12 hours in that lounge. Now, it's a beautiful lounge. It's the Silver Chris Lounge. It was a beautiful lounge. But there's bar, multiple food stations, plenty of space. Thankfully, because we got there so early, it hadn't gotten crowded yet for the day, so we were able to find the spaces that we wanted to be in. But overall, it was a really great place to be. The one downside to this
Aside from me feeling sick.
Well, aside from me feeling sick, is for most of the things we're going to talk through, we had like a trip insurance. We're going to cover all of that, kind of reimburse us for a lot of things. This actually had an out-of-pocket cost that we just had to eat. As of right now, it has not been reimbursed yet with travel insurance, and I don't think it will be just because it's essentially at fault. But they charged us $600, $300 per person because we had to take that later flight. Now, our lounge concierge actually tried to debate this and fight them on it, fight like the billing people on it, but the manager basically stepped in and he came to me and he said, hey, look, I understand the reason why you're delayed and the flight change. The issue is by the time they were able to switch our flight, essentially, they had to delay the outgoing flight. So the flight we were supposed to get on, they had to pull our bags off of that flight, which delayed that flight by 10 minutes. And because of that, we had to eat the charge. So $300 per person, $600 all in. There's worse things in the world, obviously, but that's one thing to know. If you're ever in this scenario, like this is what we did. I'm curious to hear if you would have done anything different yourself. So put that in the comments or in the DMs and YouTube or on Spotify, whatever it may be. But that was kind of that whole kind of phase one of our trip so far.
Absolutely. So we got to Hong Kong and I was not feeling any better. If anything, I was starting to feel worse. And I wasn't exactly sure what was wrong, although I know that you wanted to go to urgent care. And that sounded like a terrible plan because I really liked our suite and I was very comfortable and I didn't want to go to a random urgent care at all, like ever. So I remember I made the suggestion. I was like, why don't you just call and ask for the doctor on call? And you looked at me like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm sure they have a doctor on call. I mean...
Yeah, you said, like, why don't you check and see what concierge can do? Because, I mean, I didn't really expect them to have an on-call doctor, but I've just figured, let's see what they can do. They're concierge, right? It's a really nice hotel. And
they had a doctor at our room in 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah, 30 to 45.
It was really fast. He was very knowledgeable. He's also like a dive master. And it turned out I had an ear infection. And more on this later. But he gave me a whole examination. He had all of the prescriptions like in his little suitcase that he brought with him. And he was able to prescribe me what I needed to get up and running so we could make it to Fiji in time. Because with an ear infection, that was like the worst actual news I could have heard. Because when you have that, you risk the chance if you fly again while it's still inflamed that you can burst an eardrum. And, you know, he's like, well, we have to make sure you're clear to go to Fiji. And I was like, what? What? This is what's happening? He was a fantastic doctor. It was very expensive, very pricey, but I also got a really cool gadget that he brought, which in case anybody is into tech stuff in Hong Kong, they have this really cool device where you can look inside your ear, your nose, your throat. You can also use cleaning tools, but it's like a whole thing where you can use your phone and see it on the app. It was pretty cool. Obviously, we ended up getting one.
It's called the B-Bird. It's only $35 US. It was really easy to find and super inexpensive for like how high tech it is.
It's a really cool tool, actually. I apologize for geeking out about something as lame as a ear examination electronic.
But it was important, which I know we're going to get to, but we needed to make sure that you could be cleared to fly.
Yes.
While, I mean, it's great. Yeah, it wasn't $3,000 for this thing. It was $35 US, which was fantastic. As you said, he was expensive because his cost was 5,000 Hong Kong dollars, which works out for the exam and the prescriptions and the convenience of coming to the hotel. And that was the equivalent of about $640 US. And the one annoying thing is that he requested to pay in cash. He was like, hey, like I prefer cash if you really need to, like we can figure out through the hotel. And I know if I like ran it through the hotel, I probably could have gotten my Hyatt points and all the different things, but he just really seemed like he would prefer cash. But he still provided us receipts, doctor's notes, all sorts of things, because he also prepared us a note in case we had to delay getting to Fiji so that our trip insurance would cover like us needing to be stuck in Hong Kong longer. Thankfully, that didn't happen, but all this documentation was important because we were able to get this all fully reimbursed with our travel insurance. I'm going to talk through our travel insurance at the end specifically, but this entire cost, that whole $640 US, completely reimbursed.
Yeah. I mean, I was really glad I didn't have to leave the room. I really needed to start getting better. And after he came and gave me those prescriptions, I slept for a little bit, and I was definitely feeling better. But I think the B-Bird was really helpful in monitoring how was the progress going. Was it looking better? And this is wild because it's not. I haven't had like a history of ear infection, so this is like a brand new problem for me. It's not like this is something I've dealt with before in my life. If I had, I feel like I would have probably been way more prepared. But this was a new problem, as happens in middle age, from what I hear. We have new things all the time.
Speaking of which, first trip that you and I took, exotic trip, which was to Greece, 5 months of dating. We were in Athens.
Oh my gosh.
That was a whole other trip that had delays, and we got to Athens like a day late because of travel delays. But that's not a related story. But anyway, on this trip, we're in Athens, and we're headed to the airport to go to Mykonos. I sneeze, and this was 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. I sneezed and like dislocated my hip from sneezing. Like, not like a sneezing fit, like literally one achoo, dislocated my hip. Ended up having to go find a chiropractor in Mykonos. Fast forward, you said we're getting older, this just happens. Fast forward, I don't remember exactly what was happening. Something with my shoulder was really, really bothering me, kind of substantially. And I was like, I really need to find a doctor in Hong Kong. While you weren't feeling well, I was kind of like going out adventuring and seeing some sites and trying to do some things. I was like, I got to find a doctor in Hong Kong, or a chiropractor, I should say, specifically in Hong Kong. So Google Maps works really, really well. It's very easy to navigate the entire country of Hong Kong through Google Maps between transit and all those different things. One thing I will say, times are not as accurate as you would expect, like in the US. So I probably made 5 or 6 stops before I gave up, like different chiropractor offices that said that they were open, and I went and they were completely shut down and closed. And these were like chiropractor offices that are in high-rise buildings, so you have to get the address right, which again, very, very easy to navigate. Almost the address of every single skyscraper is on the building front, so very easy. But I did a lot of exploring to find a chiropractor and did not find one, which I eventually got to one in Auckland. Well, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, we're getting a little bit older, and unfortunately, just things happen when you travel. That's why this is one of the realest episodes that you're going to hear from us.
Exactly. These are the things that I am embarrassed about, but I'm going to share with you guys because we learned something from it and we pivoted. And I think that's an important part of our story to share, is not just the glamorous bits, but, you know, the gritty bits too. And I think that's where this would fall. Please don't judge us for being old, though, for our younger listeners.
100%, 100%. So we got to talk about the next issue that arose.
Whew. Yeah, we had a heads up real early about that next issue.
We did, because we haven't talked about this app too much on the podcast because I kind of just got into it end of last year. It's called Flighty, and in our WhatsApp community chat, people have been bragging about this, and I will co-sign on this app. I think I went ahead and paid for, lifetime access after having it for like a week, because this is the next level of flight tracking in so many different ways. And I could nerd out on how incredible it is. It tells you when your flight plan's been booked, when your tail number changes. Oh, they've changed your airplane 3 months early, so you might want to double check that your seats need to be re-updated, all sorts of things. Well, the reason why I'm bragging about this app is because they notified us either, I think, 18 to 24 hours before Fiji Airways did. There was a problem with Fiji Airways that was likely going to cause a delay. And the short version is, I guess Fiji Airways had a delay going from, I think, either Australia to Fiji or maybe New Zealand to Fiji, something along those lines, 2 days before, but they tracked the tail number, so they knew that was going to impact our flight. And because of that, we had an advance warning that something was likely going to be the issue. Now, we didn't take dramatic action on it because we didn't really know exactly what that was going to mean for us. But it ended up being the case that's why we had that 13-hour delay. If you remember in part 1 of talking about our trying to get to Fiji, that our flight was delayed 13 hours. We were alerted to this in advance time.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't as devastated only because I wanted to make sure I was still fit to fly.
Right.
I wanted to make sure my eardrum was not going to burst. And if anything, I was like, a little bit more time is actually not the worst thing in the world for me right now. So I feel like I took this one very well because I was like, this is a good thing, even though it wasn't a good thing. I knew more time would be better. But I feel like that the Grand Hyatt was really accommodating throughout our entire stay there, but especially in this situation in terms of giving us some other accommodation.
Yeah, I think this is one thing we'll probably do a little bit different in the future, because when we checked in, they asked us if we wanted the Globalist 4 p.m. checkout. And, our flight was supposed to leave by, I don't know, 1 or 2 or something like that. We were planning on being at the airport, not having an issue. So we told them no, we didn't need it. So when we knew of this delay, before Fiji had alerted us, I actually contacted concierge and said, hey, can we get our late checkout? And they basically said, no, sorry, we've already have that room planned to be checked in too. And as we talked about it in part 1, they moved us to a room still on the Grand Hyatt Club Hyatt floor. It was not the full suite, obviously, but it was a room where you could relax. And you got to rest some while I went down and explored a little bit. But we still had full access to the hotel, all amenities, the club, everything till 5 p.m. actually. So they were super accommodating, as you said.
Yeah, I went to tea time. I had some snacks. I took a bath. I relaxed in the room. I was trying to make sure I was as healed as I could because I did not want anything else affecting the rest of our honeymoon. I was like, I can control this. If I can rest this off, we'll be good. And I thought it was great that they still gave us a resting room that we were able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you guys watch our vlog videos and I'm talking through and showing the big booty, big booty.
This is not a two friends. This is not about music, DeAndre.
The big Buddha, and I'm talking about me going out like in the vlog mode, trying to tell you I'm looking for a chiropractor, and you're wondering why is Taryn not in the shots? She's been relaxed. She was relaxing, recovering while I was doing a little bit of exploring. So, but Taryn, you booked the hotel we ended up staying at because our Fiji flight didn't end up leaving until essentially 4 a.m. the next morning instead of 4 p.m. the previous day. You found the next hotel for us.
Yeah, we got delayed again. So, the Grand Hyatt cannot extend us for multiple days. I think they definitely did accommodate us very well. But I also used my Capital One $300 credit through their travel portal to book the Silveria Hotel, which is right by the airport, just really to crash for a few hours, or at least that was the initial plan based on the delay that we were told at the time, which was really a moving target. I loved the location. It was close to the airport, but it also was like connected to this huge outlet mall, which definitely resulted in some spending that I hadn't planned, but I have some really fabulous things as well as some delicious bow. Why are you laughing at me? I love my dresses that I bought there. I'm very happy about that. And some delicious bao that we had.
It was the best Chinese food I think I had in my life, and it was in the outlet mall. It was phenomenal. This place had a line.
There was like 100 people in that line.
Oh my God, it was insane, but it was so amazing. For those who don't stay at the Silveria Hotel, it's literally, coincidentally, it's right by the chairlift that takes you to the Big Buddha. So I was like, oh, I've been here. I literally have been in the same area and didn't realize that there was this hotel and this outlet mall that was right here.
So yeah, we did a little shopping. We did some eating. They have truffle and foie gras bao, by the way. Like Hong Kong. Oh,
if you didn't understand any of those things, I didn't either before I started dating my wife. So I've learned. She's elevated my food taste significantly.
I've ruined it for you, I think. But yeah, no, the location was really good. We ended up having a really good room. Our times kept changing. I feel like that was the most stressful part was, after we had checked in, we're like, oh, yeah, we'll just, stay here and we'll leave at this time. And then it was like still a moving target is like, are we leaving in a couple hours? Are we leaving tomorrow? Are we leaving the next day? What's happening?
Yeah, that was super stressful because we actually got an alert from Fiji Airways that they canceled the flight. And then Flighty, though, ironically, said it wasn't canceled. And so I ended up having to call Fiji Airways, and they basically uncanceled the flight. I don't know if maybe their rules on flight attendants not timing out or whatever, or it was literally their only plane coming into Hong Kong that had to leave. I don't know if their staff were like, hey, we can do it. I don't know. But long story short, we thought the flight got canceled. We thought we were going to be stuck there for 2 more days at least. And they did not. And thankfully, we were actually able to leave, which was nice. But the hotel that you booked, it was right outside the airport. So it was a maybe 10-minute or less Uber from the airport, which is why we picked that because of its proximity. So we could just we took a crash nap basically till 1 a.m. and then headed to the airport.
Yeah. Oh, and when you are booking there is a big difference in size of the rooms from a standard room to like a junior suite, but the price is not that much bigger. So when we had first checked in, we had a standard room and we were like, yeah, we're just going to be here a couple hours. It's fine. So we went. It was really small, but we're like, oh, this is just a couple hours. But then when we thought our flight was canceled, I was like, they had told us we could have gotten that suite for like was like $40 more or something that was just like,
Yeah, $40 more.
it was like ridiculously small amount. I looked at you and you were like, it's not worth it, Taryn. We're not staying that long. And afterwards, I was like, I should have done it. So I went back and I got us that and we switched rooms. It was much bigger. So there was a really big difference actually in like a small price point of a change. So if you are going to stay at the Silveri, go for the suite. You have a lot more space and they even have some really nice views actually of the sunset. We really took in a beautiful sunset there as well, which again, unexpected. We didn't expect to be there, but you got to roll with the punches.
And right, and that club lounge as well. I mean, it wasn't to the level of the Grand Hyatt, but it had a club lounge, so we actually had some snacks before dinner there, some drinks. They had some drinks, some champagne. It was nice. It wasn't expensive at all.
Yeah, it was really affordable, and it's worth the splurge to get the nicer room. If they give you that offer when you check in, you should do it.
Hey everyone, quick break from the episode. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening on so you never miss an episode. And if you've gotten any value so far, it would mean the world if you left a quick rating or review. It helps more people discover the show and keeps us motivated to keep creating great content. Also, if you're feeling stuck or want help with points and miles, whether it's picking your first card, planning a big redemption, or even having someone book it all for you, we've got you covered. There's a link in the show notes to schedule a free points and miles consultation. Just fill out a quick questionnaire, tell us your goals, and we'll take it from there. And don't forget, our newsletter and private Facebook group are great ways to stay on top of breaking news, updated card offers, and tips that don't always make it into the podcast. You'll find those links in the show notes as well. Now, back to the episode. And here's a follow-up to that as well. I mentioned trip insurance. Yes, Taryn used her $300 Capital One benefit, which Capital One basically covered the cost, but we sent the cost of everything, including the upgrade to the suite, for our trip insurance, which I'm going to talk about at the end. And the entire stay there was basically covered by trip insurance because of the fact that we had this flight delay. So trip insurance, insanely important, especially on big trips like this. Biggest downside with this, well, I shouldn't say biggest downside, there's a lot of downsides, but unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets, I should say, is I was looking so forward to staying at the Cathay Pacific Pier Lounge, which is one of the top lounges in the world, and it's in Hong Kong. You only can use it if you are flying business class on a One World flight and you are One World Emerald or status. And unfortunately, it was closed because everything else in the airport was absolutely shut down because the airport's not meant to run overnight like a lot of these other like Middle East airports. And so we went to the bridge. Great lounge. It was fantastic. We had good food, good noodles, all drinks, all sorts of things. But my regret is that I missed the pier lounge. So we got to go back to Hong Kong at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure we will connect there again, and I definitely want to check that out. The bridge was really nice. It was super empty, and most of the people there were sleeping. So it was definitely not exactly what I would have wanted from the lounge experience. So definitely have to go back. But I think the most like sad part about the whole delay is that we weren't in Fiji yet, and we were supposed to already be in Fiji. So not only did we get to Hong Kong late, but now we're getting to Fiji late.
Yeah, and that was, we explained there in that same part 1 episode that we got to Fiji at night, and then we had a 2.5 hour drive to the Nanuku Resort, which is a beautiful coastline drive, which we anticipated, but it was at night, so we couldn't see anything. So we were just in darkness for 2.5 hours, which is a long time after being, on a 10-hour flight.
Delayed. Yeah.
Yeah, and being delayed and everything else. So it really wasn't that great, and we didn't get to arrive during the day. We got there at night. They basically, we talked about it already on that part 1, but that was a little bit of the downside there. But we had a little bit of...
Well, hold on, before we get there.
Yeah.
The funniest part, I feel like, when we got into Fiji at the airport, when I was buying something at duty free, I gave them my ticket, and they were like, Hong Kong? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, you're the flight that was delayed for 13 hours. I'm like, yeah, that's us. Like, at first they thought it was like the wrong ticket. Like I was showing them the wrong thing.
That's right.
And then they were just talking to each other. They're like, hey, did you hear what was the delay reason? I don't know. Like, you think I know? But it was just funny because the airport staff was so shocked about the delay as well. And like, even in customs, they were like, ooh, you were on that Hong Kong flight that was delayed. Ooh, word got around.
It did. And that reminds me, actually, I forgot that a few days after, a week after, because, we're traveling there. So because of Google searching, maybe Fiji stuff, I started getting in my like feed of notifications from Google so apparently, that delay, whatever caused our flight to have an issue was one of Fiji Airways' worst delays in their, I don't say history, but in some long period of time, because there were people that were stuck in the Nadi, which is the capital, the main airport in Fiji. Nadi is how it's pronounced, actually. Nadi Airport. They were stuck there trying to get to Auckland, I think, for almost a day, and there's not really a ton of hotel options. There's not really a great lounge like for long term. And so I guess that was one of Fiji Airways like worst days that they've had from a flying standpoint, where they had to issue apologies, all sorts of things. We happen to be collateral damage of that. But yeah, our plane was super delayed because of all of this stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, we could have definitely been stuck in a worse airport for that situation. So I'm grateful for that. But yes, we finally got to Nanuku, which was spectacular. We've talked about how much we loved our time there, our welcome, and the food and everything else. But I think there was a couple moments that we both thought we were losing our minds.
Yeah, because in our room, we kept seeing what looked like sand all around like the floors and such, which we're at a beach resort, so that makes sense. But then we would see it on top of the dresser and other places and in our shoes.
Your shoes. I put mine in the closet.
Yeah, right. My shoes, but not like because I went outside in them. Like I left the house wearing flip-flops and my like nice boat shoes had no sand in them. And I got back to the villa and my boat shoes that I didn't wear had sand in them that I thought. So, Taryn, what was going on?
I was going to say, like, the first couple of days, I think both of us were just like, are you making this mess? And sort of looking at each other, honestly. I mean, it was like, well, it had to have been you. Where'd the sand come from? You didn't wipe your feet. So we both made assumptions that were not correct. And it wasn't until we did a little bit of internet sleuthing that we figured out what it, could have been possibly. And luckily, Nanuku had it was a manager's cocktail event, right?
Yeah, something like that, like a manager's social where they had like all the managers cocktail hour. There was drinks were included, food was included. They had some kavas time, all sorts of things going on. But yeah, they call it a manager's social or manager's cocktail hour, something like that.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity and, to talk to the GM, which we did. And I was nervous. I was embarrassed because I didn't want to say it, but I also didn't want to not say anything because what we had found on the internet is that this could either be termites, and this entire villa is made out of the most beautiful wood that is like hand carved, gorgeous. So it's like this could be termites or this could be wood burrows. I didn't even know what that was. And it just felt like the right thing to do to let them know, because I just didn't want this place to be gone, because termites can really take over a place that is made of wood like so fast. So I'm glad we said something, even though I know we kind of wrestled with it, to be honest, just because we're not trying to complain, and we also didn't want to make it feel like that. But the GM was so incredible. I feel like once we mentioned it, he took so much urgency to rectify it, move us to a different room, even offered, some spa benefits that we unfortunately wouldn't have had time to use before we left. But they made it right immediately. But that's one of those situations where, sometimes you just don't want to complain about something because it's not the end of the world. But I also knew that that was something that could impact them and that villa from being available in the future if we didn't say something. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think at first it was like, oh, this isn't that bad, right? Because just as we explain it, it just seems like, oh, it's just like sand. But then as you research it, it's like, oh, this is actually kind of like a mixture of like kind of their droppings. And then it was a problem, like it was like getting into the bed. So it was more than just, oh, there's a little bit of grains of sand on the ground, but it started becoming a problem because it was like it was everywhere. And we had met the general manager a couple times because he had greeted us maybe our first day there.
Well, the next morning, because we got in late at night. Yeah.
Oh, the next morning, correct. And I don't know if that was like, hey, because we're diamond status with Hilton's SLH property, or just greeting us because that's what he does. Really, really nice guy, great guy. And so at this manager's cocktail, he was just saying hi to us, just, how are things going? And we're like, it's great. And he like walked away, and I remember you were like, do you want to tell him about this room? And I was like, no, I was more the reluctant one. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go ahead and do it. And he immediately just instantly showed concern. He's like, it's probably wood burrows because if it's termites, the place will be gone in a week. But he's like, let's get you out of there as soon as possible. We'll find you a different room.
And we're going to check it out and we're going to fix it regardless of what it is. They're like, we need to see it. So we need you out of that room regardless so we can fix this. And we ended up getting like a nicer room with, you know, the pool.
Basically a pool and beach villa.
The beach access. Yeah. So
yeah.
We ended up getting an upgrade. That was not the intention. The intention is because, honestly, concerns. You know, I don't want a place to be gone because I didn't say something and I didn't speak up. And I think that's where we landed on that. They more than made up for it. This is not something that is happening in the majority of the resort, so please do not let this impact the way that you view it. If anything, I think you should look at the way that they responded, because I think that is more important sometimes, is like how do people, or how does hospitality respond when something goes wrong versus, you know, when everything's right, because it means a lot more when something goes wrong to have them really stand up for you and to make it right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And overall, our stay in Fiji across the board was great. We had no issues at Namale, the resort that we talked about in part 2. But one thing I'll talk about is, so when flying to Namale, we mentioned this, we flew one of the smallest planes of our entire trip, and it, you know, seats maybe 11 people, if that, but it wasn't a full flight. So all of our luggage flew on board with no issues getting to Sabu Sabu, which is the airport, the very tiny airport where you got to Namale. The next issue arose, though, and this is something that neither of one of us have experienced, when we were leaving Sabu Sabu, trying to get to Auckland. And I know, Taryn, this was probably, of all the things, the most stressful issue that we had across the board.
Yes, I feel like because we prepare so well for our checked luggage to get lost, right? Like we have carry-on contingencies. So we got there, they're weighing people. I see them kind of talking to each other. And then they tell us that, you know, it's a small plane, there's too many people, and no one's luggage is going on the same plane. None. Not even our carry-on bags. Only our personal item, which... who plans for that? I mean, I don't have extra things in there. I have the necessary things in there, but still, that was a shock. And they're like, hey, just write this down on a piece of paper where it needs to go so your luggage can find you there. And it was a lot of chaos. I mean, there was a lot of people who were taking it in stride. Aussies are always a good time, I have to say. They brought a lot of humor to the situation. They were very cool about it. There was an American couple that I was a little embarrassed to be American because of how elevated he got.
Right.
And that, you know, I mean, I'm sure that most of our fellow American travelers have had a similar moment where we've seen someone else who just makes us cringe and go, oh no, we're from the same place. That's so embarrassing. That's what I felt in that moment. But it was also like, well, when are we going to get these bags? Because we weren't going to be in Auckland for that long.
Yeah, so if you're wondering, like, well, how do they get them to you if they couldn't fly them? As you mentioned, so we had, like, our normal checked size baggage, of course. We also had carry-on and personal item. Some other couples, their families there had, like, dive gear and other things. So there's a lot of luggage in general. So what they did is they had to van or bus them all about an hour and 45 minutes away to another airport that was bigger, that can actually support a plane that could haul it and fly everything to Nandi. And so we were only going to be in Auckland for 4 days. They were basically saying, hey, I should get there the next day-ish. But that meant that we had this afternoon flight. We had to fly to Nandi, and then we had to check in for our New Zealand flight to get to Auckland. And we literally, like, I had my backpack, which is mostly tech gear for me because I've got drones and plane and cameras and all sorts of stuff. You had your personal item, your bag.
Purse. Yeah.
Yeah, your purse, basically.
Which is makeup and a couple of chargers and my medical stuff that I will not forget again.
Right, absolutely. And then, so if you actually go on our blog, you can see a picture. I think that's the Namale blog where we talk about, like, just the small plane that we're on. The picture is actually of this second flight on our way out of Sabu Sabu, and you'll see a guy, he's actually holding his carry-on sized roller in his lap the entire flight. It's an hour flight, but, like, there's no overhead compartment. He was like, hey, I don't have 2 carry-ons, I just have this one. They're like, well, just put it in your lap. I mean, it was kind of crazy.
It was wild. And in that situation, make sure, and this is something we did, is that for every piece of luggage, because they were just giving us blank pieces of paper. They're like, just write where the bag needs to go. And I was like, oh, this is scary. But we made sure to do that on each piece of paper for every piece of luggage with our contact info, with our hotel information of where we needed that luggage to show up. And luckily, we also have air tags, but I know that's going to come in later.
Yeah, air tags for every single piece of luggage. If you thought you only needed it for your check bag, have it for literally every piece of your carry-on, because we'll talk about that when we get to Auckland, because we landed in Nandi and they had basically said, hey, when you land in Nandi, talk to the baggage people there. They will handle this and get everything routed. Just to keep this story short, that's not where it gets solved. It gets solved in your final destination, basically, for us, which was Auckland. And so as we were asking people in the Nandi airports or checking into our next flight, they basically were like, sorry, we can't really help you. But this is where I messed up, and I take blame for this. Thankfully, it ended up working out. I check all the time, all the things that we need to make sure we're getting into the next country. I double check, I triple check. And for whatever reason this time, New Zealand requires 2 documents. They require electronic travel authorization. They call it an ETA. But then they also need an NZTD, which is a New Zealand Travel Declaration. And you have to pay a tax basically to enter into New Zealand through this. And they're like, where's your document? I'm like, I have the ETA right here. And they're like, no, when's your NZTD? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, thankfully, because although our plane only fit 11 people, this was a One World flight, and Fiji Airways is One World, and because of our American Airlines status, we are One World Emerald status, so we got to go into the business class line.
It didn't get our bags on the plane, though. As the only people with priority status on that plane, I thought there was a chance that we could at least take our carry-ons, but no.
Nope.
It didn't count. It was too small. Sorry.
We got upgraded to exit row, which basically was, I had a handle next to the window with me. I'm pretty sure I could have ejected out of the plane during mid-flight, but it was the exit row, so I had the most foot space I've ever had in the smallest plane ever.
That's true. That you really very much did. And because we were in the One World status line, we were able to get some more help. So I was really grateful that everyone at the counter, one of them gave us their hotspot information. So we were able to actually get the app to load so we can finish our paperwork because the service there was so slow.
Yeah, no, so the issue here was they're like, you need this document. By the way, the gate's closing in 5 minutes, and it's going to take you longer than 5 minutes to fill this document out. And so we're trying to get on the Wi-Fi. The airport's not working. My regular 4G, my international data plan is not working. It's not working. It's just going slow. And the lady at the check-in counter, she's like, here, use my phone's hotspot. In my mind, I'm like, is it really going to be that much better than airport and then my phone 100% faster?
Lightning fast.
Yeah. We both got paid and our NZTD documents done in, 4.5 minutes. So we squeezed in there.
Barely.
And were able to actually make it and be able to board our flight. Basically, as we got through security, they were like, hey, this flight is boarding.
Yeah, I barely had time to buy some kava at duty free, but I did.
Yes, you got your Fijian kava. Yes. Now, we land in New Zealand and we go immediately to the baggage service desk that applies to Air Fiji, essentially. And they were like, hey, we got to fill in a baggage report, all these different things. And so I do. And then he says, by the way, make sure that you give this document to customs. And it's not passport screening, it's biohazard containment, basically. And, we're tired. We're a little flustered because we don't have bags and have to go through this process. So as we're walking through and leaving after customs and all the different things, New Zealand is super, super strict on what you can bring into the country.
Do your homework.
Yeah, absolutely. Do your homework. If you have the wrong type of dirt on your boots, it could be a $400 fine you pay.
But they're protecting a beautiful place. But I understand why they are so strict, but it is very strict. So definitely know what you're getting into and be more prepared than we were.
Yes, exactly. So as we're leaving, no one's asking me for paperwork or just looking for our passport, so I don't remember to give them the paperwork that the baggage guy told me to give to them, which ends up being a problem because when our bags finally did arrive, they didn't have that paperwork, and basically they're like, we have to either break these things open or you have to give us the password because they can't go through their biohazard scanner, basically.
Well, and that's the step that we missed. Because you didn't give them the form when we left, that was when we were going to say, hey, we give you free reign to scan it. That was the thing we had to opt into with the paperwork, which obviously we didn't know. And we were very flustered and there was a lot going on. So that was the piece that they didn't have authorization for. So, we're in New Zealand, we're waiting for the bags, we keep checking up on them. And so did our amazing hotel in Auckland, another Hyatt. I feel like they were really fantastic at following up on this for us as well. Even though we did a bit of an oopsie there, they were really diligent about helping us through that process. And I could tell they really did want to help us fix it and get our luggage, which it took some time.
Yeah, so the Park Hyatt Auckland concierge, they wanted our baggage claim number information. They contacted baggage services themselves. They were trying to basically do all the coordination for us. Without belaboring the story, well, I will pause and say, thankfully, AirTags came into play. And I don't really know what the solution is for Android, sorry. But with AirTags, I could actually check and see when we were in New Zealand, okay, our bags made it to that airport on the same island as Savu Savu. Okay, our bags have made it to Nandi. And then what happened was we woke up the next morning in Auckland, and one of our bags made it to New Zealand, but the other three we could see were in Nandi.
Guess whose bag it was?
Yeah, one of mine out of our 4 bags. I think it was my big suitcase.
Yeah, of course. I knew it was going to be yours. I called that.
Correct. Yes. So mine made it, which makes no sense why mine made it and the other 3 didn't. But long story short, that ended up causing a little bit of another issue with them waiting on other bags and other things. But the bags all arrived. But when they arrived, we had to wait until biosecurity could get through it. And biosecurity had a shift change. So it wasn't until essentially 9 p.m. the next night that we were able to get our bags, and I had to drive to the airport, get our luggage, and then drive back to the Hyatt, which is about a 30-minute drive each way. And that was an Uber ride for all of those things.
And it gets worse because I was feeling sick again. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So I could tell my throat was hurting, and I was like, oh no, this is my ear again. It was the same ear. It was the same problem. Again, this is not a thing I've dealt with in my life. I do not frequent with ear infections. I mean, I'm a diver. That would be a very problematic thing. But I could tell in the first signs way earlier than I think I was able to even tell when it happened after our first flight to Singapore. So I was like, hey, we're at the Park Hyatt. Let's ask for the doctor on call. This doctor, way more affordable, but was also there in our room within 20 minutes. And he was fantastic. He was actually an aviation doctor. So he actually also did doctor's calls throughout all of New Zealand as well as Hong Kong, which was really cool. Way more affordable though. But he didn't have the prescription on him.
Yeah, so he charged 400 New Zealand dollars. He didn't ask us for cash. He just said, hey, the hotel will reimburse me. You'll repay the hotel. That ends up being about $240 US. Thankfully, I got my 9X Hyatt points for that because we used our Hyatt credit card for that, which again, like I said, I could have probably done the same thing in the Grand Hyatt, but the doctor really seemed like he preferred cash. And I guess the rules, of course, are much stricter, much different in New Zealand on medication than in Hong Kong. So we had the doctor's note, all the different things, but he had to fill out a prescription and I had to go get the prescription. But he actually drove me in his personal car and dropped me off at the pharmacy on his way home.
It was so sweet when he said that, after he was like, oh, you're going to have to go there to to pick it up. And he's like, would you like a lift? And I was like, oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, it was a really nice guy.
I was like, Kiwis are great. This is my first impression of Kiwi hospitality, and I was not disappointed.
It was fantastic. And so at that same kind of pharmacy where I got your prescription, I ended up getting some toiletry items, some deodorant, those type of things, and all of the expenses for all of that. So the prescription, the cost of the doctor, the Uber to and from the airport because of our baggage delays, and the toiletry items, all of those things reimbursed to us 100% through trip insurance. Because we had of course the doctor's notes, we had the bill, it was listed on our folio for Hyatt, all of that was covered, sending in receipts, all of it, which again, trip insurance, absolutely huge.
Yes, and I'm going to go see an ENT because I don't want to have this happen on any more flights, although I think we figured it out with some nasal spray, but we'll see. But it was not the, most gentle landing into New Zealand for us due to the bags and another sickness for me. But I focused on getting better, and I'm glad that we got reimbursed for everything, and you were very helpful at helping get all the things that I needed. And we watched a lot of the Lord of the Rings things, which also helped us prepare for what was to come in New Zealand. So I feel like at least I accomplished something in those moments of trying to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've downloaded our blog or gone on our blog and seen our 2-hour or 2-week New Zealand itinerary, I mentioned on there in Auckland, there was the opportunity to do the Waiheke premium wine tour. I mentioned we didn't get to go on it. This was why, because we were resting. And instead, we bought plenty of wine on our camper van journey.
Oh, yes, we did.
Which helped to make up for it. But that's why we did not go on that. So in part 3 last week when we talked through that was the reason why. But we stayed in, we watched and caught up on a lot of Lord of the Rings within a couple days.
Yes, which was great. And it was preparing us for our next stop.
It did, which before we get to our next step, I forgot. I found a chiropractor in Auckland.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did.
Yeah, I did. Helping Hands Clinic, it was fantastic. The doctor was amazing. I Ubered there one time, then took a Lime scooter back from there back to the hotel because you can Lime and scooter all over the place, which was great. But found an amazing chiropractor there who set my shoulder and body back right properly. Thankfully, kind of recovered in Fiji. I think the problem on the Fiji flight was because that wasn't lie flat. It was angled for 10 hours. It made it worse. But then actually when we got to bed in Fiji, it felt better. But then getting to Auckland felt worse. So got reset, thankfully. Actually saw him 3 times between the 2 days we were there and then 1 day before we flew back home. So again, getting older problems, finding a chiropractor, not something I thought I would need to do on a trip before, but it's a thing now.
Oh, and not a getting older problem, but just a female problem. I needed to get my nails filled in because I get gel manicures, and we were in week 3 of a month-long trip. So my nails were too long. They were getting stuck in my hair and all the things. You girls, I know you get it. I found a fantastic place that was right in the train station. I think it was called a Britomart, and it was really quick, really fantastic service. And while he was getting his, he went to his chiropractor.
My back adjusted.
Yeah, your back adjusted. I was getting my nails done because I knew that once we were kind of on the road throughout New Zealand, it was going to be a lot more difficult when we weren't in a bigger city to try to find somewhere to get my nails done. First world problems.
And that place was walking distance right from the Park Hyatt and very centrally located as well to the ferry terminals and all that. It's a very easy to find place where you went.
Everything was really easy to get around to in the area. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, we flew into Queenstown and we checked in.
Queenstown was,
It was amazing.
When you land the plane, you're just like, oh, it's so beautiful.
So incredible. And then we were like, hey, you know what? Well, I said, this is a me thing. I'm booking points efficiency, and IHG property, because there really wasn't a ton of other points options in Queenstown. There's not a Hyatt or anything like that. So went with IHG. We've talked about Taryn's IHG status. She actually bought up to get to Diamond status.
Diamond Elite
status, yes, which they had an opportunity to buy into. Maybe $400 or $500 at the end of the year. You buy points, but those points also get you to Diamond Elite status, which we knew we would benefit from on this next stay.
Or we hoped.
We hoped. And it wasn't exactly what we were hoping for during our honeymoon.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, I'd like to say, I hate to say I told you so.
Okay, all right. So here's what she means by this. Okay, guys. So it was the Crown Plaza in Queenstown. On the line, the pictures look amazing. Looks like a really great property. It's really not that bad of a property, to be very clear. Now, she was like, it's a Crown Plaza, though, and, we like to stay more in their luxury collection. I was like, yeah, but, A, points, right? Because I'm trying to be points focused. And B, if you've ever stayed at a Holiday Inn outside of the U.S., they are really, really nice. Are they the Waldorf Astoria? No. Or a Ritz? No. But they're really, really nice properties. Almost like how a Hyatt Regency in other countries looks like a Park Hyatt here. I mean, it's phenomenal places.
So he's hyping this up the whole time. We've been at a Grand Hyatt, a Park Hyatt with globalist status, and he's just hyping up my Diamond Elite status when we get to the Crown Plaza. So hype is here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and I've got this brand new shiny status, and look how beautiful this place is. And there was nothing wrong with the room. I want to start by saying that. And I think if it was a different trip, it definitely could have worked, but it was definitely not giving honeymoon vibes.
After the Grand Hyatt, after the villa in both Namale and Nanuku.
We have wraparound suites, corner suites.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was regular room. It felt a bit like more like a motel. However, I think because of the outdoorsy activities in New Zealand, there's a lot of people who are there just for hiking. And if we were there for hiking, that would have actually been perfect because you're not really spending a lot of time in your room. There's so much to do, especially in the South Island in the summer. I mean, it's so gorgeous. There's so many things. The sun is out till 10 o'clock. So I think it could have worked. I was very disappointed that we didn't even get any upgrade at all. The location was really good of the actual Crowne Plaza. It was in the middle of town, it's a really central location. And there were rooms that had views of, the beautiful fjord and
the lake and everything
yeah, and all the mountains. So I was assuming that at least we would get like a view or something. So we didn't have a view. We didn't have really any of that, and we didn't even really have enough space for our luggage. If I'm being if we're really being honest, I feel like that was the probably number one problem is that. It was a 33-day trip. We had more stuff than fit in a standard room.
Yeah, the staff was really nice. Again, it wasn't the most ideal place for us from a honeymoon standpoint, as you mentioned. The best way I can compare it to would be it was like staying at, as you said, like a motel in the United States versus even like a Hyatt place here in the States was a much nicer quality place to stay. And and it was funny because I talked about to you the Holiday Inn being much nicer. The Holiday Inn Express that we passed looked really nice there in Queenstown. So it didn't really meet the bar. It wasn't great. However,
I saved the day.
So yes, you saved the day in a couple ways. So you booked the Spire, right? I know you used which portal for that?
It was also Capital One. I had additional credits on there from the Bandos situation.
Yeah, from when we went to the Maldives and they had to...
Yeah, they refunded my $300 credit, which would never expire. So I had two $300 credits. That's why if you heard us mention the other one earlier, this is my second one, which was one that did not expire.
Yeah, so we did pay just straight cash for the Spire. This was last minute booking. We were in the Crowne Plaza as we were booking the next place. And again, we just shelled out over 200,000 IHG points for our stay here. I was pretty confident that those points were completely gone because we literally checked in. We're literally in the room and we're like, hey, this is just not really where we want to stay for multiple reasons. But I was surprised by what happened next.
First of all, I was just relieved that you agreed because I thought you were going to be like, this is fine. And it was just going to be me.
I'm a trooper, but I will say I was disappointed. I was pretty disappointed in myself. It really wasn't what we were going for.
Yeah.
But again, it's not a bad place to stay.
It's not.
From a point standpoint, cost standpoint, the location is like we literally could walk to the Spire from there and everywhere.
It was closer to Berg's Burgers too, right? Ferg Burger, yeah.
Yeah, Ferg Burger, all the places we talked about, the ferry that takes you across the island to Walter's Peak, like all of that's literally right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in a great location.
So I don't want to knock it too bad. It
wasn't right for our trip. It wasn't right for our honeymoon. And we had just been to so many luxurious places.
Correct.
It just didn't feel right. So the Spire was definitely where we needed to be. And that was a really happy pivot that was not intended. And I fell in love with this boutique hotel. And if you are in Queenstown, you definitely should stay at the Spire. It is so spectacular. And I love a boutique hotel. It's super modern, super fun. We've talked about this quite a bit, but now you know how we ended up there because normally we would have had another point stay. And that is why you didn't hear about one.
And we booked that last minute, literally day of, like, hey, we need to stay here tonight in the peakest of peak season timeframes in Queenstown, where everything was basically sold out.
Yes, we got lucky. You were like, should we go out the emergency stairs?
Oh yeah, I was ready to just like...
You avoided conflict. I can't.
Yeah, I was like, let's go out the back door.
I was like, no, we're just going to tell them. We don't need to just like bounce. We'll just say, hey, this isn't what we thought. No hard feelings. Here's my room key. We're checking out. Because I also wanted them to be able to sell the room. I don't want them to not be able to benefit off of that. And I think that was the reason that I was so insistent that we did that. Not because it felt good to go tell them like less than an hour after checking in, like, yeah, we're not going to stay. But I think it was the right thing to do so we could open it up because it was a busy season. And I'm sure that somebody else did benefit by getting the opportunity to book that room, which was in their price range.
And not only was that the right reason for those reasons, but what ended up happening?
Well, their customer service was spectacular. Essentially, they sent an email saying that, this Diamond Elite member had not, been there for their stay, and they asked to, reimburse my points. And I was reimbursed my points except for one night, which was, they couldn't really have anybody check in. It was kind of late in the evening by the time that we had decided. Well, actually, even by the time we checked in, it was kind of too late for them to really resell that room. So I lost the points for one night, but they reimbursed all of the rest of those points, which there was no guarantee. I was hoping, but obviously we were willing to take the L on that and just figure out a better plan. And honestly, it did all work out really well. And I think that they, again, their customer service was great. They were really booked. They didn't have any upgrades to give us. So, we made it work, and I think it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, and to give you some points for scale, we used the IHG buy 3 nights, get the 4th night free on points. So this stay would have been $1,500 for those 4 nights. It still cost 202,000 IHG points for the 3 nights. And they ended up refunding technically a portion value. So we didn't get a third of those 200K. We actually got a fourth of the 200K points back. So we got a lot more value. I thought they were just going to say, hey, all 200,000 points are gone. And we got a large majority of them back. So I'll take it as a win.
Yeah. I mean, we walked away thinking that we wouldn't get anything back. So I was really happy to see that they made that effort. And I don't know if it's because of my status. It seemed like it from the email, but I don't know. You guys tell us if you guys have had a similar experience and if they took care of you as well, because I'd be really interested to hear. Because, we haven't done a whole lot of stays at IHG, but now that I have got my status, we're going to try to just, we're going to vet them out a little better.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that was pretty much the major things of our trip. The only last couple of things we'll throw out there is we talked in last week's episode in New Zealand how we kind of got lost in the Karangahake Gorge, where we basically just missed a sign and ended up on a hike that was supposed to be an hour round trip, and we ended up going an hour in one direction before turning around. And my tidbit recommendation for anyone is when you travel, especially out of the country, or if you're especially going to a wooded area or mountains or anything like that where signal could not be strong, you can download Google Maps offline for basically anywhere in the world. And so I had done that. So that's why we were in like SOS, no signals area when we were an hour out from the car. And I was able to actually pull up Google Maps and see like, oh yeah, well, there's no way we're going to be able to keep on this path and get back. And that's when we made the call to turn around and go back to the car. So download Google Maps offline. Absolutely helpful.
And if you're traveling somewhere where you don't speak the language, obviously we were fine in New Zealand since English is what everyone is mostly speaking. You can also download Google Translate offline with the language that you're going to be using in that country, which can also be really helpful if you're in a spot in a similar situation where there's no signal and you need to communicate with somebody who is not able to speak the same language as you. You can also download Google Translate offline with the language that you need. So just wanted to piggyback off that.
Absolutely. And that was basically it. The only last thing is because we got delayed, because we got semi-lost, we ended up getting to Hahe Beach Resort.
It was a beautiful hike.
Yeah, it was a beautiful hike. It was one of the most beautiful hikes to possibly be lost on, to be very fair.
Honestly, yeah. It was a great day.
But we ended up getting to the beach resort really, really late at night, which, for one, I mentioned this before, but make sure you check into beach resorts on time or else you might not be able to get in. Thankfully, this place we called ahead and they said, hey, look, we actually have a late check-in kind of process. We'll email you the gate code and all the different things that can give you an envelope. Will tell you where you're parked and where your station is to be able to camp. Well, we got there at night and it was really, really hard to navigate the campground in our specific lot at night with the camper van. And the short version of it is a guy kind of came out of his tent and was like, hey, I'll help you figure out where you're going. He went to his tent where he got a light to kind of see where we're supposed to be on the map, helped us navigate in. We ended up parking with no problem. But that was probably the next most frustrating piece, is that it was really hard to navigate the campsite and weaving and driving the camper van between tents and on grass. It was like a grass road basically around tents to get to our campsite.
Ours was the only open site, so there were so many obstacles. But I just want to say again, Kiwis are awesome because look at how much they have just the hospitality of just the average person who is just there on their own camping trip that's like, hey, let me help you figure this out. And I love that so much.
Absolutely, Taryn. Well, the honeymoon, absolute blast. I know we recapped all the beautiful aspects of it, which it really was in all a 10 out of 10 experience. But we also wanted to be able to be vulnerable with you guys and talk through the things that didn't go perfectly well as well. Because as you said, Taryn, at the beginning, right, travel isn't perfect. And, we wanted to go over with you. And this was your idea, which I thought was a beautiful, beautiful idea to be able to have this extra episode to talk through the things that didn't go well and how we were able to navigate it as well. I think we covered anything, babe. So any last thoughts that you had?
I just want to say, I feel like if it wasn't for our Points and Miles knowledge, I don't think we would have been able to pivot so well with a lot of these challenges that happened. I feel like the community and the sharing of information is one of the things that really helped us throughout this journey. And I think that's the intention for any of you who are listening to this episode, is that when there are obstacles, you have a whole community that's out there, and, check in our WhatsApp chat if you have a question, if you encounter some obstacles. I'm sure that there are folks that are there from us and, that can help navigate, okay, how do we pivot? How do we figure this out? Because everything isn't always going to be perfect. And it's really how do you handle it? Which, is that not like the perfect metaphor for a honeymoon as well? And like a new marriage of, everything's never going to be perfect, but it's really like, how do you come together and not kill each other, which we didn't. So.
No, you're absolutely right. We're still here. As I said last time, I'm still here to tell the tale. Actually, before we wrap up, there's one thing I can't forget to mention. I kept talking about trip insurance. So we purchased World Nomads trip insurance, and I've purchased World Nomads for our largest trips every single time we've taken them for over since 2019. I've used them. I've never needed to file a claim with them ever, but I've just heard good things about them over the years. They've actually approached us about doing affiliate content with them. I don't know if by the time this goes live if we'll actually have that set up, because transparently, I didn't want to do affiliate content for them without actually knowing how good they were. I've heard how good they were, and I buy them every single time, but I've never needed to actually use them. So for the two of us with World Nomads, because we had to put in every single country we were going to, it was about $650 for trip insurance for this. Now, you might be wondering, why did we buy trip insurance if we have credit cards and other things that cover delays and other things? Well, do you really want to be dealing with, well, the Chase Sapphire Reserve has great travel insurance, but if you use all your points to book your Hyatt stay, does it cover that? I didn't really want to deal with that. I wanted to make sure I had everything covered no matter what. They have reimbursed us for literally everything outside of that $600 issue with Singapore Airlines. That was our fault, which we're still possibly working on. That might actually get updated and get reimbursed. And it's really, really powerful, because one of the things to know, in case you're ever going through a medical issue overseas, they requested that we actually had to file a claim with our health insurance first. And then once we got the basically denial letter from our insurance saying, hey, we're not going to cover this, they were going to cover it after that. But it actually goes towards your deductible and your out-of-pocket costs with your personal insurance, at least here in the States. So that was our experience. So World Nomads, if we are affiliated with them, by the time this goes live, we'll have a link for it. But I wanted to make sure that we actually had a good experience ever with it if we ever needed it. And it's been fantastic, very easy process, direct deposit on everything. They say they communicate very well, very quickly across the board. And I can't speak highly enough of our experience with them. And again, it's just nice knowing you don't have to remember what card did you use and did it have the right insurance, and Amex insurance is different than Capital One's and Chase, and did you put the charge on the card?
And this flight was this card, and this flight was this card. So which one do we?
Exactly.
I mean, there's so much there. This was peace of mind. So I'm very grateful that we had this. I had no idea I was going to have sudden ear infections or other issues that were going to, obviously not affected by my body, like the Fiji flight delays. But it was a huge peace of mind to know that we were taken care of in that situation. Like all things, we're not going to recommend a product if we haven't tried it and used it and are advocates for it.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap this one up. It was a fantastic 33-day honeymoon. Taryn, I'm excited for all the more journeys to have in the future. I'm also excited to make sure we have World Nomads in place for any other possible trips, delays, or other things.
We're not getting any younger.
Exactly. My back's feeling a little tight right now as I think about it. So with that, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoyed this opportunity for us to be a little bit vulnerable with you and share with you all the less glamorous sides of travel. If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to follow us on all the social media channels. Sign up for our weekly newsletter, our private Facebook group. Those are the two ways to get access to our WhatsApp community chat if you want in there, and to get insider information sent right to your inbox every single week. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and as always, we will catch you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.